Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Roundup. I am your host, David Fox. With me, as usual, is UberHansen, and we are here live after a very dramatic kick that actually went through from 61 yards out. I don't really have words to describe what I felt because largely I was trying not to feel things leading up to that kick. Because I just thought I don't want to be feeling feelings right now. Because if I do feel feelings, they're going to be bad. Because there's no way on God's flat green earth that Tyler Bass makes this kick. And not only did he make it, it was right down the middle. And it was good from like 67 yards. It was just one of the most elation, like strong feelings of elation from absolute, like almost pure despair that I've ever felt as a Bills fan, which is saying something if we're being honest.
That kick was, we were talking on before we went live here, and like there was no way it was going in, at least for me. I did not believe that was going in for a second, and then he absolutely drills it. It was one, it's phenomenal from like just a human perspective.
Yes.
And actually, obviously all the videos that come out after of Josh almost crying on the field after the game, talking in an interview, and Tyler Bass in the locker room, like clearly Bass has been going through it, and for him to drill that is just really, really cool. But it's also really cool as a Bills fan and equally as bad as a Dolphins fan. I actually looked it up. I tried to find, did this ever happen in the Bills versus Brady era? Was there ever a kick that late in the game where the Patriots ended up winning on a field goal? Not quite the same, but the Patriots did beat the Bills 23-21 in 2013 on a 35-yard field goal with 5 seconds left. So this one was just a little bit further, about 26 yards further. But Dolphins fans have to be going through it right now with the whole like, Josh Allen is their Tom Brady now. Like he's reached that level of dominance over them, which is it must feel awful. We felt it. We felt it.
Yeah,
with Brady.
We know what that is. We know what that feeling is. It sucks. It's awful. I mean, even in the Brady era, the Dolphins were kind of his bugaboo.
Yep.
For a lot of his time there, and you saw it happen many times over the years, but. Yeah, in that same vein, like the Josh Allen just completely obliterates this team, and they've had one win over Josh Allen and Sean McDermott since 2018. One win, which is just a crazy thing to think about. Absolutely wild. Not as crazy as making a 61-yard field goal when you've been struggling for this entire season, but man, just incredible. It's just one of the coolest ways to end the game. Thank you all for joining us tonight, by the way. If you are on YouTube or really any other place, feel free to leave a comment and we'll probably bring it up on the show. RJ says there were 3 people on the planet that thought that kick was going to go in. 3 might be generous. I'll be honest.
I don't think Tyler Bass thought it was going in.
I think Tyler Bass thought it was going to go in, and that's probably it.
What do you think? Do you think McDermott thought it was going in, or what percent of him do you think thought it had a chance? Do you think it was like McDermott?
I think McDermott, being as stoic and even keel as he is most of the time, probably thought 50-50. He was already thinking of, all right, what do we do if/when this misses? Which, like, every coach does, I think. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because apparently the go and no scenario for the kick was 60 yards.
Yeah.
And Bass was already out there like, no, we're kicking this. And they were just like, all right, let's try it, which is a crazy thing to do, by the way.
It makes me wonder what the number was. Like it was 60, like that's what they said it was. But let's say it was 63. Do then are they like, no, we're not doing it? Or Bass is like,
probably.
I can't do it. 63.
Yeah. Like 60 to 61. How many times does a kick a yard short from that distance, right? Not often. But
True.
Yeah, it's just man, just absolutely crazy. Puka 3 says burn that Diggs jersey. As I've said before, absolutely not. The Diggs jersey stays because it's still 4 of the coolest years that I've ever seen from a Buffalo Bill. And he's amazing and I love him, even though I hate him at times. Nothing more Buffalo than that. Come on. Sespinar says, no Bills fan that remembers games from the 90s thought that was going in. I was having numb flashbacks until the announcer changed inflection during the call. By the way, if you were like me and in a crowded Bills bar and you didn't necessarily hear the call over everyone else freaking out, go back and listen to that call because it's so good listening to Kevin Harlan. Just great. Bills fan 21 says Bass has always had the leg. His issue has been accuracy. I'm as confident of him making a 55-yarder as I am a 35-yarder. I mean, that's on point because he did miss an extra point yesterday and doinked another one in. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, we kind of hit the best part of that game right off the top. So before we get any further, we're just gonna talk about one thing and one thing only, and that is you guys, our lovely sponsors over at Cover One Pass. Folks, if you are not a One Pass subscriber, let me tell you something. It is the best $60 a year you will spend on football all year long. It is exclusive content just for people who are subscribers. You get in-depth analysis, news before other people, potentially, who's to say. You also get access to the Discord server where you get to meet everyone else who's a One Pass subscriber. And you get to talk about, quite literally, whatever it is you're interested in. Music, food, television, movies, politics, I guess. And, of course, football. I mean, it's just... And you get fantasy advice as well. It's just all sorts of great things that come with this. You also get Greg Thompson's salary cap breakdown / explanation, just like how the NFL salary cap works, which is a complicated system. And with the New Orleans Saints firing Dennis Allen and maybe entering into actual rebuild mode, it might be worth brushing up on how the salary cap works to see how they navigate that mess of a situation. Folks, like I said, it's the best $60 a year you'll spend on football all year. You get access to a great community of people that just are like you, love the Bills, love football, and just want to hang out and have a good time. So $60 a year, go to cover1.net. Best money you'll spend all year on football, without a doubt in my mind. Sign up today. Thank you all who are One Pass subscribers. We appreciate all of you. All right. Back to things. S1 Night Nico says, what up, guys? Is Bean more likely to get a defensive tackle in favor of a wide receiver with new injuries to Smoot and Keon and Carter? I think they've made the move at wide receiver that they wanted to make, and Amari Cooper is that guy. So I think that move is done, and I am much more interested in seeing what they do with the defensive line, especially with injuries. And I guess we'll talk about that now, because trade deadline tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. Weird that it coincides with an election, but we're not going to focus on that. That's not what we're going to talk about today. But there's a clear need at defensive line for this team. Sorry, I had dinner like right before this because I totally forgot that I did not have dinner until like 20 minutes ago. So if I do or say something that, but other than that, so there's plenty of defensive linemen that I think are available for trades. How many of them are actually worth it is a different story, because I think when you look at the market, I think that Adam Pencil, who does a lot of our stats and information work for us, has been banging the Sebastian Joseph Day drum for a couple of weeks now, I think. And unfortunately for him, and I think others, the Titans won yesterday, so maybe they feel. No, I'm kidding. They're not gonna buy or like not sell off someone at the line just because they beat the Patriots yesterday. No, but this is just an interesting player because it's like what, a little over $1 million that the Bills would be responsible for someone that, I mean, if you go to Adam PENSEL on Twitter, he's got the Sebastian Joseph Day propaganda machine running high right now. He's got charts ready for you. He'll tell you exactly why the Bills should be trading for this guy. And honestly, I'm into it. The Bills defensive line, particularly the interior, has not been all that impressive to start the year. I don't know. What do you have any other thoughts on Joseph Day or any other players that you think they should go after at the deadline?
I don't think, outside of defensive tackle, I don't think that they should or will go after any other position, just because they're kind of stacked from a depth standpoint at every other position, and or they've already made the move. So wide receiver, you traded for Amari Cooper, you're not trading for another wide receiver. It just wouldn't make sense. And then as far as safety goes, you have Cole Bishop sitting behind DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards to some extent too. So you're not fitting a fifth guy there. You go to linebacker, for instance. I think they're deep at linebacker. They're solid. Like, hopefully you get Milano back. Hopefully, you still have Dorian Williams, Terrell Bernard, Balin Spector, Nicholas Morrow. Like, it doesn't make sense to me personally to add to any of those spots. The only one that really truly makes sense is defensive tackle, just because you've had the injuries to Dwayne Carter. You can move on from, I forget his name now, even Lodge, the guy they claimed from the Falcons, I believe. So you can move on from him. You open up a spot. It could be Ilianku that they just bring up from the practice squad. It could be Sebastian Joseph Day. I just pulled up best candidates at each position, and the names there: DJ Jones, who's I think on Denver, but they're not going to trade a player at the deadline. They think they're going to make the playoffs. And then Adam Butler, Quentin Jefferson. Defensive tackle is the only position I particularly want, because it's been, from my view, bad. Like, they're just getting gashed up the middle. And the bigger problem is, like, no one's maintaining lane integrity. It's just, they need to fix that. That's the only way they're going to slow down the run game. The linebackers I trust can handle business. The corners, the safeties I trust can handle business. But defensive interior, man, I'm so disappointed in it, because I was so excited for it this season, right? Austin Johnson, Dwayne Carter, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver. Like, it seemed like it could be the best interior defensive line in the McDermott era, and it just hasn't been. I don't particularly even know what's going on. It's just not good enough right now.
Yeah, and there's times where you see Ed Oliver in particular, like, coming up field and trying to be disruptive, but the rest of, especially the interior, is just not working in sync with that. They're not providing the push or even the stalemate to try and allow disruption to be helpful. And at that point, when one guy is upfield and the other guy is out of position, then it creates a really big gap for the linebackers to try and flow into. And sometimes you can't, because then the rest of the offensive line or the other blockers are getting their blocks at the second level. So it all comes together. Shocking that this team game relies on more than just a single player.
Yeah,
but it's difficult. Especially yesterday was really tough, because the Dolphins, like, for the first time in Mike McDaniel's career as a play caller for the Dolphins, actually committed to the run game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very surprising. And if you're a Dolphins fan, pretty encouraging, I would think, because he just does not do that. I mean, seriously, I cannot think of another time where he's actually done that. But on the other hand, as a Bills fan, I mean, you're looking at that saying, what do we got to do here? Like, something has to give. And it wasn't like Bernard and Williams weren't trying to do stuff. It wasn't like Taron Johnson wasn't. It wasn't like the other parts of the defense weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. It was just that so clearly the defensive line was getting pushed around, moved around far too much.
Yeah, there was a play that stuck out to me. I think it was Devon A-Chain. I just remember the Bills had kind of stacked the linemen, and A-Chain was sitting behind them and actually just kind of like stopped and waited. And Ed Oliver should have protected the inside gap, probably the A gap, and instead he just tried to go outside of the offensive guard, and he just opened up this massive hole. But Ed Oliver literally had tossed that offensive lineman backwards. He wanted to go make that tackle for a loss. Instead, if he had just stayed there wasn't anything A-Chain could do. He would have just been stalemated into that spot, and it was like that was a frustrating moment for me, and it's just been frustrating all year watching that defensive interior, which makes sense to upgrade there with a day 3 pick. I think that if anybody has this belief that the Bills are about to trade a first-round pick for somebody or a second-round pick for somebody, I don't see it. I don't think Brandon Beane wants to play that game. But if you can get somebody for a 5th-round pick that you think's an upgrade at DT4, for instance, or DT3, even over Austin Johnson, go do it. It doesn't hurt to give up a 5th-round pick. We have plenty day 3 picks heading into next year's draft.
Exactly. And let's see. Chris Miller says, think of bigger needs at linebacker and safety. I mean, we are kind of dismiss that claim.
I mean, like, do you have any, like, I think linebacker's fine. I don't really, I have
given the fact that you don't have Matt Milano, Dorian Williams has been fine. Like, we know what Dorian Williams is. He's not going to be some great coverage guy, but he brings a certain level of physicality which is nice. And he can tackle fairly well and play the run pretty well. So I'm not concerned about upgrading linebacker. We both feel phenomenally strong about Terrell Bernard, and we have very strong feelings about Terrell Bernard. All positive. Let's see. RJ Melville says, Sebastian Joseph Day playing acoustic in a coffee shop near you. In fairness, he is in Tennessee right now, so that kind of tracks. Roy Collins says, make Mike Edwards part of a trade package since he doesn't want to be here anymore. I wouldn't say that Mike Edwards doesn't want to be here anymore. I think he just wants to be in a place where he's going to start, which sounds like I'm saying the same thing. But I think if he was starting here, he'd want to be here. I don't think that he doesn't want to be in Buffalo. I think he just wants to be in a place where he's got to start. And right now he's just not. Let's see. Chris Miller also says, learn to appreciate or lean. Learn. I'm going to say that's learn. Learn to appreciate what Terrell, I'm guessing this is Tremaine, Edmonds brought to the table. Size matters. Hey, listen, I'm all for Tremaine Edmonds revisionist history, man. After spending years on this show defending Tremaine Edmonds, I'm all for it, baby. Let's talk. Now, Heather Smith says, what's Linval Joseph up to? Is he on a team? I think he's on a team. Is he on the Dallas Cowboys right now?
Yeah, Roy Collins says he's in Dallas. I honestly didn't know where he was.
Yeah. Don't know if you've watched a lot of Cowboys. I hope you haven't, because they just sort of suck. It's not good. Nathan Travers says, I think the Bills need to target Shakir in the red zone more. That's an interesting thought. Does he? I feel like he doesn't get a lot of targets in the red zone. Am I wrong?
I think he gets. I'm gonna guess he gets targets in the red zone, but it's from like 10 to 20. As soon as they get within 10, he's not a part of their game plan. The game plan within 10 yards is, hey, Josh Allen, do it. Just do it.
Or just run the ball.
Yeah. Or just
they do like to run the ball in that like 10-yard range out, like in those actual goal to go situations. They also just like have really been trying to hammer Keon Coleman in the red zone as well. Like let's talk about that, right? Where on that play where he's wide ass open on a slant against Jalen Ramsey and could have easily, maybe not easily, but probably scored a touchdown. Yeah. Not only does he not catch it, he bobbles it and it lands directly in Jalen Ramsey's hands for an interception. I thought they were going to go with the fade that they had done a couple times against Seattle, and that he, completely bodied Tariq Woolen on. But going with the slant was also a good choice. I mean, he was open, just catch the ball, right? And the only thing you can argue is like, well, throwing the slant and it having it be incomplete or getting bobbled, like, could potentially lead to something like that happening where it's an interception, as opposed to a fade, which is probably not going to be an interception, right? Mm-hmm. But that's really like you're splitting hairs here, and I don't think the call, which I don't think anyone was really questioning either, was really the problem there. It's just an execution thing, and I think that this is just part of the growing pains with a rookie. You get plays like that happen, and it sucks, but hope he just finds a way forward, and hopefully the shot that he took from Jordan Poyer doesn't turn into anything major for him in terms of injury. He's getting evaluated, I think, is the term that McDermott used. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. And I'll just add to, and again, I looked this up. I don't have these numbers memorized, but the Bills score a touchdown in 64.1% of their red zone appearances, which ranks 6th in the NFL. So they're pretty damn good in the red zone. Could they improve? Sure. The Ravens are first at 74.4, but it also helps when you have a literal monster as a running back, which the Bills have a literal monster quarterback. So it isn't crazy to think that the Bills could push that number as high as 75%. But right now, 64 is pretty damn good.
Tyler Abel says, is that a sword or a dagger on your wall? Yes, it is. Right? Hold on. I know how directions work. Sort of. Kind of. Reverse. There we go. Yeah, right there. It's a little dagger. My parents bought it for me when they went to Spain a couple of years ago. So now I have it on my wall. It's pretty cool. I like it. Hence why it's in direct view of my camera. Yeah, I just as far as trade deadline moves, I just defensive line is what I'm focused on. I think it was Ryan Talbot who suggested Kalen Saunders from the Saints, who would be someone they could fit, I think, into their cap situation. He mentioned that this is somebody that they looked at during the 2019 draft. So something like that could be interesting. He had a really solid 4 years with the Chiefs before signing with the Saints. And the Saints obviously have completely given the white flag for this season and have already fired their head coach, who shouldn't have even been coaching this season anyway. But yeah, the Saints should definitely be sellers before tomorrow. They should be making like multiple moves to get rid of guys and hope that they'll say, hey, you want to take some of this salary so that we're not completely screwed over the next 2 years or so. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I imagine that I would hope for their sake, for the Saints' sakes, that they will be strong sellers at the deadline. But
yeah,
who knows?
Saunders has a year left, so obviously 2024, but he also has another year next year on his contract, which I personally like because in my head, if I make a trade, I don't want it to just be a 8-game rental or, let's say 9-10 game rental. Amari Cooper's a different story just because the Bills essentially, they needed something. It was getting ridiculous that they couldn't get open. Granted, apparently they don't need him because they scored 30 points yesterday without him. Nonetheless, I'd like anybody they trade for to have 2025 contract. Again, just a personal opinion there.
You want Taysom Hill?
No, dude. Fake ass quarterback. Hell no. Oh, he's been like the bane of my existence, along with a lot of other. I don't know who I did. Actually, I do. It's Trevor Lawrence. That I dislike more than Taysom.
Okay, so personally, as an Eagles fan, watching that game yesterday was very frustrating because Nick Sirianni is just who he is.
Oh,
it was so I can't. Was it you? I don't think it was you. I think it was a Jags fan who, when the Jags were down by 2 scores, and Trevor Lawrence was driving, and they actually got it within 1 score left. Somebody on Twitter said, "Well, it's not garbage time anymore, so Trevor ain't getting this."
I said something similar to it. It was when Saquon slid short of the first down marker.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
easily
remember that.
got. He could.
Yeah.
He should have just got it. So what? You go out of bounds. At least you
just
get the
overthinking it.
But then the Jaguars got the ball back, and I tweeted something along the lines of like they could regret not getting the first down there, but Trevor Lawrence is the quarterback, so they probably won't regret it.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to he never can do anything when it matters.
It was penalty yardage and then a couple of halfway decent throws, and then he completely airmailed a fade. A fade to a third string running back, by the way, is a bizarre throw to attempt.
Nakobe Dean picks it.
A 5'9" Nakobe Dean picks off the pass. Insane, ridiculous, stupid game. Both of those head coaches should be fired after that, but they won't be. Yeah, that's just crazy. Zach Fry says Buckner from the Colts. Let me just tell you something. That contract, not working. That is a completely unfeasible. Great player, for the record. DeForest Buckner is a very, very good player.
Ooh.
But
I just saw the number for next year.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. And it's a lot of
million?
money. Yeah, just a cool $27 million. Yeah,
At 31? No.
Yeah, no, and not at age 31. Music Blogger 87 says money is a problem though. We still have Russo, Cook, Cooper, Shakir, Benford to re-sign. So yeah, yes, Rousseau for sure. Cook, Shakir, and Benford can all wait another year. Am I remembering that correctly? Or
Shakir is entering this is year 3, so next year is year 4.
Yeah. So they can wait until the 2026 offseason. I hate.
Yeah, 2026.
Yeah. 2026 offseason to try and get those contracts done. Cooper, whether they re-sign him or not, it is what it is. If he is good, sure, bring him back. If he, gets better offers somewhere else, so be it. There will be other players that the Bills can get to try and improve their wide receiver group in the 2025 offseason. But yeah, I get that. Cespinar says Sirianni is the coach that some Bills fans think McDermott is when they want him fired. Man is actively trying to lose these games. Man, it's not wrong. I mean, so here we're gonna make a very brief rapid trail over to David, the Philadelphia Eagles fan. So the thing that irritates me with Sirianni, he doesn't call the offense. That's Kellen Moore. And that started off rough. And it's a bit of an odd marriage between him and Jalen Hurts, particularly because Kellen Moore's offense leans more towards guys like Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert, who are, read the field, get things set pre-snap and get things in a position to work before the ball is even snapped. Jalen Hurts is more like point and shoot, make it simple, make it easy. So it's a bit of an odd marriage, but right now it's been working the last couple of weeks because they're running the ball more. Barkley's been really good. The offensive line is really solid, blah, blah, blah. So you don't call offense. You don't even design the offense. You don't call defense because that's Vic Fangio's job. What is it you do around here, Nick? Because the entire logic behind his fourth down decision making is non-existent. It does not make any sense. And they went for 2 early and often in that game, which also didn't make a ton of sense. They also got stopped on 2 different push attempts, which then made them scared to do it again. So then they did rollouts on 4th downs. It was anyway. That's enough Eagles talk on this show.
I'll just say the dichotomy between Sean McDermott and Nick Sirianni, as humans, I don't think they could be more different people. They're opposite people.
Sirianni is just a very braggadocious. Want everyone to see just how fired up I am kind of guy. And there's people who respond to that. And McDermott is just very even keel, steady presence and doesn't get so over energized or too in the face of people. He's a steady force, which I appreciate. Not everyone does, obviously.
Fair.
Let's move on to the offense, unless you want to talk about officials.
Yeah, I mean, I put the note. They're so bad, man.
Horrendous.
It has to be like I was going back to the replacement refs in my head, and they were better than this. It makes no sense how bad they are. It's not even that. No, it is that they're bad. But my biggest issue with them is I don't know when they're going to call something a penalty and when they're like the rules are so inconsistent. That's the problem.
Yes.
Like you can't just pick and choose when you want to do something. I've been arguing this all freaking season, it feels like, because sometimes even with like the replays, they're like, now we're going to do it this way this time. So but you don't get to do that. You're not the lawmaker, you're the law
Enforcer.
And it's just that holding. Oh god, man!
Both
the two
holding
calls
were just. I mean, I'm not kidding. I kind of lost my voice because I got so mad at both of those. The snatch trap was one thing, just because it leans more into the like anytime a defensive lineman hits the ground, they just want to throw a flag for a hold, which is dumb for that exact reason.
He's been called twice for it this year on the snatch, which he shouldn't.
Yeah, absolute garbage. Then the one that they called on Osiris Torrance is, I mean, it's not even like ticky-tack. It's just not there. I mean, I tweeted this after Ty Dunn put the video on Twitter. I was like, I have to know what they're seeing here. His hands are not at the shoulder pads. The jersey is not being tugged or pulled away from the shoulder pads. None of the usual indicators for a hold are happening on this play. The defensive lineman is not even like signaling with his hand, like, hey, I'm getting held here. Like, there was nothing to suggest that a hold took place. Do you know why? Because there was no hold taking place on that play. It was ridiculous.
Dude, on that, here's my actual theory on that play, and I don't remember who the defensive lineman was. There wasn't a hold there. Like, clearly was not a hold there.
Right.
What I think happened was that defensive lineman was ridiculously lazy. As soon as Josh Allen passes him, the defensive lineman just stands there like, okay, maybe he doesn't see Allen go, but he seemed to give up on the play. Mm-hmm. I think the official essentially saw him give up on the play and was like, oh, he's got to be getting held because he's not trying to do anything. So I might as well throw a flag. And they take off a freaking awesome 21-yard touchdown. Like, it was such a cool run, and it not that the law of cool deserves to have rules
we did this
changed
with the Chiefs last year,
but the Chiefs did something illegal and it got taken off the board. The Bills did not. Oh, it's so frustrating, dude. And the best part of it all is the Chiefs and Buccaneers play tonight, and you can damn well bet the Chiefs are going to get a flag that's going to get everybody pissed off, just because they do every game. Not saying that the NFL is out to support them. It just seems like it happens every time the Chiefs play. So for all the official haters, you're going to hate them more if you watch tonight's game.
So true, unfortunately. Let's move on to the offense. Outside of having his 20-yard fantastic gazelle-like leap into the end zone taken away, Josh Allen was 25-39 for 235 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So Josh Allen now has 2 interceptions on the season. One of which you could say, sort of on him, sort of on Cooper. More just like these two aren't on the same page. It is what it is. This one from yesterday, just so obviously not on him. Mm-hmm. But whatever. I guess he's just a turnover machine, though. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even care if he throws interceptions anymore. I think he's kind of already bucked that narrative to some extent. People are like, all right, he went, 7 games without throwing a pick. He can do it. If he goes every single game the remainder of the regular season with 3 touchdowns and an interception, I sign me up today. I'll sign up for that. Like, if we're going to score 30 points and Josh Allen's going to throw a pick, okay, fine. I'll take that every single game that the Bills play, because 30 points is a big number for another team to keep up with. So the interceptions have always been overrated. It's wild that we don't talk about, the NFL isn't talking about interceptions as much in general this season, lo and behold, because Josh doesn't have them and some other players like Patrick Mahomes does this season. But Allen's been great at protecting the ball. Absolutely great.
Yeah, he's been very, very good protecting the ball. Just just seems more willing to take what's there, and it's been good. It's been a very good season for Allen. Ray Davis, 20 rushing yards, 70 receiving yards. Those rushing yards, first of all, it always feels like, I feel like whenever I look at a Ray Davis stat line, I'm like, really? That's it? That's all he got? I mean, the receiving yards, obviously, I mean, that was such a long touchdown catch and run, which was a great play by him and was totally needed at that point. But the rushing yards, when he came into the game to run the ball, I was like, that's what they need right now. It's just somebody to attack downhill and be super physical, and that's what they got. That's what they needed, and they got it from him. And even Ty Johnson on his limited carries and production was good. I wrote about this in my recap yesterday. Was like, all three of these guys are good players: James Cook, Ty Johnson, and Ray Davis, and they all are able to win in different ways. Like, there's a way to maximize their individual skill sets, but at the end of the day, they can also all be in for the pass game. They can all be in to run the ball, and it doesn't feel like they're tipping their hand one way or the other when one of them comes in on whether it's a run or a pass. And I think that's a super, super valuable thing for Joe Brady to have. And I think they've been utilizing it really well so far.
Yeah, Ray Davis has been awesome. Like, that his ability as a downhill runner is the thing that excites me most, because James Cook does dance a little bit, and it usually works. Like, his dancing works because he can find a lane, hit it, and pick up 10 yards. Ray Davis, for the most part, is going to come right at you, and he's going to slam you in the face. So there's points where I'm like, just put Ray Davis in and do that, because I know he's going to get 3 yards at least. He might not rush for 10 yards in chunks, but he's going to get me 3-4 every play. And at points when the offense needs to, like, a little spark to get like a second and short or third and short or something, Ray Davis can be used for that. He was great yesterday. James Cook was pretty damn good, and Ty Johnson was good as well. Like, this trio of running backs, I think if you polled people across the NFL, like, do the Bills have good running backs? I think they'd be like, they're fine. Like, James Cook is a nice piece. Ray Davis, whatever, and Ty Johnson, whatever. I think the Bills might have one of the better trios at running back in the NFL, and just nobody realizes it, which is pretty damn cool too.
Yeah. It's just impressive that they have all three of these guys playing really well, that they come in, and I don't feel like, they have Ty Johnson out there, or like, that's not going to do anything. It's like, and Ty Johnson is not going to do like some big game-changing play 99% of the time, last year's Jets game notwithstanding, but he does enough. Like, he can pass protect well enough. He can catch well enough. He can run between the tackles in particular well enough. That's all you can, for a third running back on your roster. Yeah, that's really all you need. Seriously. I mean, it's a very, very impressive stable of running backs that the Bills have right now.
Yeah, I mean, you think most teams, or there's a lot of teams in the NFL that don't even use a third running back ever.
Yeah.
The Bills like to sprinkle Ty Johnson in because he's actually pretty good at what he does. So exciting piece to have, kind of to sit behind Cook and Davis and spell him when he needs to.
For sure. We talked about Khalil Shakir earlier, who also had 6 catches and 50 yards against the Dolphins. And it seriously feels like anytime he is targeted, it is just money. And not just in the fact that he catches the ball, but that it's like for first downs, for yards after the catch. He's just so good. And it just reminds me again, this was somebody that a lot of people liked when he came out of Boise State in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Why was he drafted? A lot of people, I think, had as like a day 2 type of guy. And then he just goes in the 5th round. And I still have yet to see like an actual explanation as to why that happened.
I mean, I don't know either. I do remember when the Bills did draft him, they said they were surprised. They had a 4th round grade on him. Right. They were surprised he was this, so they're in the 5th. So they moved up because they're like, we got to go get that guy. And he's been really good. He's also been way better than I ever thought he was going to be. I thought he'd be a fine wide receiver. There was a point where I was like, you know what, he's a good reserve piece because he can play outside or inside, but I don't know if he'll ever, reach the level of like 1,000-yard receiver. Well, he's pretty well on his way to some extent to 1,000 yards this season. He's just been like freakishly good at catching whatever's thrown to him, to a point where I think they put up a graphic during the game yesterday, and it was the completion rate when thrown at the highest like of the past 20 years when somebody has 35 or more catches. And Khalil Shakir is number 1 for this season. And last season was the highest before this season. Like, he's been that good and that consistent. And he is the easy button for Josh Allen. That phrase has been used a bunch. When he wasn't on the field or wasn't healthy this season, Josh didn't have an easy button because no one could get open quick. He is Cole Beasley, but better, in my opinion, at this point. Like, he does the same thing that Beasley did for Allen, but he just does it better in his after the catch ability. I've never seen anything like it. He bounces off of people and somehow still stays up, does front flips and still stays up. He's wild. It's really cool that he's turned into not just a good wide receiver, but borderline great. Maybe even can start thinking about that E word at one point to refer to him. He's good. He's really good.
He's a very, very good player. And it's just crazy to me that he is someone that just got overlooked, I guess, for no apparent reason. It's just so weird to me. But hey, the Bills end up benefiting from that, and good on you, Brandon Beane. That's a big play. Just sort of looking up like scouting reports from when he came out. Nate Tice, who I think now works for The Athletic, at the time was working with Bleacher Report doing scouting stuff there, had him as 10th best receiver in that class and 43rd player and a potential impact player in the second round. Like, ends up being a 5th round pick. Some other people had him as like a 4th round pick, right? I really don't understand it. I don't get it. Everybody raved about his character, so it wasn't that. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of weird that this happened, but the Bills end up benefiting from it, so I'm all right with that.
20 players were drafted. 20 wide receivers were drafted before him. He was 21st in that class. There's a couple. There's good players in that draft. Garrett Wilson, obviously. Yeah. I guess Chris Olave. Yeah. But then you see players like Treylon Burks and Tyquan Thornton, Sky Moore, Velus Jones.
Oh, Sky Moore. Oh, man. Velus Jones. Gosh. Like I remember people trying to sell me on Treylon Burks, and every time I watched him, I was like, nah, that ain't it. Yeah, he's big and he's athletic. That I'm not buying this at all, though. Let's talk about Dalton Kincaid. So Dalton Kincaid is a tight end, which means he has to catch the ball, he has to block. Unfortunately, he can't really block. So this is not like, oh, he's not putting in effort in blocking. Like, no, he's trying. He's just not good at it, which is very unfortunate for a team that probably wants to run a lot of 12 personnel. But part of how you run 12 personnel effectively is by having both of your tight ends be players that can run and block, or catch and block, rather. And they can't. Dawson Knox can. Dawson Knox is a very good blocker, arguably underrated as a blocker, and can catch the ball. And actually this season, I feel like has been very solid whenever he's been targeted. But Kincaid just does not have the strength, the size. I'm not even 100% sure what it is, but he doesn't have it, whatever it is that he needs to have to block. The quarterback sweep on the second drive of the game, right? That ends up getting tackled for a loss on third down. Just, they kind of had it if Kincaid had not been one of the primary blockers on the play. And yeah, you can also say, hey, Joe Brady, why is this guy one of your primary blockers on your play?
Yeah,
But
to the short side of the field, too.
to the short side of the field, and that's also fair to bring up. But that was a tough one. That was a tough play, and it's not the only play that he's had where he struggled. Now, I would say on the edge, right, like outside against defensive backs, he's fine. But again, that just sort of limits what it is you're able to do with him in terms of like running 12 personnel in particular.
Yeah, it's starting to become a pretty big concern for me because he becomes like kind of a signal to some extent to the opponent of what the Bills are going to do. Like if you know he can't block, he's essentially at that point a wide receiver because he's out wide. He's not in line. And he doesn't have the speed of a typical, like he's not a wide receiver. He's a tight end. His body type and his athleticism fits a tight end, but he doesn't play like a tight end. And it starts reminding me, not quite as bad as this, but to a player like Mike Gesicki, for instance. And Mike Gesicki had a lot of talent as a wide receiver style player, but he couldn't block, and that essentially removed his ability to ascend in his career. And I start wondering the similar things with Dalton Kincaid. Like, can he ever be an elite tight end? And will he be limited by his inability to block? I also, looking at Dawson Knox, his snap count is creeping up each and every single week. Yeah. Part of that is because of his ability as a blocker. And I know people still hate that contract, rightfully so, but he doesn't need to catch the ball on every play if he's making blocks when he needs to. He's executing in the red zone. He's got a good rapport with Josh Allen. I need to see more from Kincaid, and it's not just receiving. His blocking needs to get back. It's not going to happen this year, but going into next season, that's something he has to work on. I don't care if he has to have Aaron Cromer live in his house to teach him how to block. Like, build another bedroom onto your house and bring Cromer in because somebody needs to fix his ability. Just make him – he doesn't need to be great, just adequate. Just better than what he is now, which is bad as a blocking tight end.
It is one thing. If it was just adequate, I would live with that. You know, It is what it is. That's not really why you brought him in. You brought him in because he has high level receiving skills. But those receiving skills, first of all, are not being shown consistently at this point. And his ability as a blocker is not adequate. It's just outright bad at times and a detriment at times. And that's got to change. And it's tough to watch at times, which is unfortunate because I like Kincaid. I want him to succeed. And it's not just because I have him in a particular dynasty football league. It's, I think he's a talented player. And I think he has the ability to do something with his skill set. But right now it's not there. And it's been a disappointing year 2 for him.
Yeah. And again, just look this up. He was targeted 10 times yesterday. Caught 4 passes. And that doesn't mean that every pass was perfect. And it also doesn't mean he dropped it, but like he's getting the targets. He's just not like, either he's not getting to the spot he needs to, he's not getting open enough. So like we can complain about the blocking because there's legitimate complaints and you can see that he's bad at it. But he hasn't been as good of a pass catcher as you want him to be this year. And he's had critical drops. Like he has been a disappointment this year. Doesn't mean he's a bad player. Just means the expectation. I had way higher expectations than what I'm seeing right now.
We both did. And like you said, it's not that we think he is a bad player or that his time with the Bills is like some overreaction like that. It's just that right now, there are other players who are contributing to this team more, and he should be contributing to this team more. Right now, he's not. And he has the ability to do it. He's just got to go out and do it. Whatever it is that has to be figured out needs to happen. Moving on to the offensive line. There were times in the first half where that offensive line got scrambled. And this has nothing to do with the phantom holding calls that were levied on them. There were a couple of times where they just had no idea what they were doing in pass protection, or the snap timing was off. Like it just wasn't good. And it was very out of character for an offensive line that's been pretty good since last year and moving into this year. And I'm not going to like throw up a red flag necessarily for this. I'm even like hesitant to call it a yellow flag with this. It just was concerning against a Dolphins defensive line in particular that was missing arguably, maybe even easily, its best player in Zach Seiler. And I just felt like this was a game where they could have done more and done it more effectively, and they just weren't able to.
Yeah, that's my exact thought too. It was a game where I expected the Bills to absolutely dominate. Like they should have just been tossing those guys back on every single play because the talent just wasn't on the field for Miami, and they didn't. And to some extent, I think the Bills have a good offensive line. I think there is some belief out there that the Bills have a great to elite offensive line, and I'm just not there. I think a lot of times Josh hides some inefficiencies of that offensive line. There's guys that just can kind of run free at Josh. I mean, even on Josh's third touchdown, where to be fair, he did break outside the pocket, but like he's taking on 3 rushers at one point. 2 of them are tackling him and he throws a touchdown. Like that's not a sack because you have Josh Allen as a quarterback. So I do think he covers them up a little bit. It, again, doesn't mean they're bad. It just, there's been these weird little moments this year where I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like they're better than this. Like they need to be better than this. And the Dolphins aren't a very good, don't have a very good defensive line. So was kind of disappointed in that. We're about to go play the Colts, who I watched that Vikings game yesterday. They're very aggressive. I'm interested to see how this Bills offensive line stacks up against that Colts D line.
Colts defensive line is interesting. The Colts defense as a whole has not been very good this year. They've gotten better as the year has gone on. Like they were a rough watch early on in the season in particular, but they've gotten a little bit better, a little more consistent. Obviously, DeForest Buckner coming back for them from IR has helped, even if he is very expensive. And it'll be an interesting matchup. And especially because when you look at the defense, and we're going to transition to defense now to talk about this, the Colts have Jonathan Taylor, who's still a very good running back. And after seeing how Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert kind of just rolled over this Bills defense and the defensive line in particular, there's some concern. And the Bills defense, I mean, we talked about this at the top, so I don't want to like over exacerbate this particular point, but the defensive tackles have been very disappointing all year. And like I said, I think Ed Oliver still has the ability to kind of put it together. I don't think that he's been the biggest problem on this defensive line. Like you could see yesterday that he was getting upfield and getting penetration and trying to make a play, but the rest of the defensive line was not coming together as a unit to try and make that disruption matter. And it was tough to watch because this is just so against like how Mike McDaniel usually calls an offense and calls plays. It was really, I feel like it was in the fourth quarter when I really realized, because that's when they really started to give the ball to Tua more, who also had a pretty good game to his credit, especially for that touchdown to Jalen Waddle. Such a like outside of the norm to a play where he's actually extending the play and moving. It was tough. It was a tough game for the Bills defense, but the fact that they committed to the run and ran the ball kind of like a normal team, not doing all this like frou bullshit that they like to do, and, which is not to say that they like completely went away from that or like that they weren't motioning or that they weren't doing this and that. Like part of why the Bills struggled is not just because of the defense line, it's also because of how the Dolphins structure their offense and using motion to get guys out of the box, right? And because of the speed that they have on offense, you have to respect that motion because you can't just like, oh, well, the safety has it. It's like, yeah, but that safety's going against Tyreek Hill. So I'd rather not if we can help it. But it's just one of those things where the idea, the actual theory that the Dolphins were trying to do actually came to fruition, and they executed very well. They called that game very well. It's probably one of the best Mike McDaniel called games I've seen, where it felt like the only major mistake they made was just holding on to the ball. I mean, just that Raheem Mostert fumble was so critical. I mean, it felt critical then, and when you look back at it now, it feels arguably more critical.
Yeah. And Teron Johnson's awesome. He's freaking awesome.
All pro Teron Johnson, by the
way. He better be all pro 1 this year. Not all pro 2, all pro 1 this year. Yeah, it was a great game by the Dolphins offense. Like, I think that's one thing I've even seen from Dolphins fans on Twitter. They're like, we can't blame the offense for this one because we did put up 27 points. Like, Tua was incredibly efficient. And like you keep saying, like, Mike McDaniel stayed with the run, which is something he just never did. Even in that playoff game when the Bills were going up against Skylar Thompson, they could have stayed with the run. It was working. And then Mike McDaniel and all his infinite wisdom was like, I'm going to throw the ball with Skylar Thompson. Yeah. So, oh, my God. He can be such a bozo sometimes. But yesterday he wasn't a bozo, and it worked in their advantage. The thing is, the Dolphins are incredibly unique, though, because of that speed they have at wide receiver. It makes those kind of linebackers sit on their heels a little bit more because they can't just identify a run and run up and try to stuff it, because you're going to get Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle going over the middle, and then you're screwed. So I do give the Bills defense a slight pass because this was a very uniquely difficult matchup in a game that was called well, but they still need to play better. And the Colts, their offense, whatever. The Chiefs' offense hasn't been playing great, but like here in a couple weeks after the bye, the Bills are going to have to play the 49ers, who are going to have Christian McCaffrey back, and we're going to learn a lot about the Bills in that game when they're going up against McCaffrey and Purdy and Samuel and Jawan Jennings, I think is his name. I'm kind of blanking there.
Yes.
Like, the Bills are going to play really good offenses that are able to both run and pass. They have to be better. They're just not good enough right now to get the ultimate goal of what most seasons are, but they're good. They're a good defense. Yesterday, they didn't play like a good defense, though, I'd say.
And I will say this. It's easy to kind of be doom and gloom over a 2-win offense kind of going that far and that deep with you and taking your defense to task. I'll put my positive spin on this, right? I'll spin zone this a little bit. The Chiefs, or not the Chiefs, sorry, that has nothing to do with this. The Dolphins. The Dolphins gave the Bills their best shot, especially on offense. Defensively, kind of, especially given the injuries they have. But on offense in particular, they gave the Bills their best shot. Like, arguably their best shot in the last couple of years. And the Bills defense arguably gave them one of their worst shots, and the Bills still won. Like, it is what it is, and I don't want the Bills to live in that world often where they're just throwing out their worst games, especially like you said, when they're going up against good offenses coming up. But it's worth saying that even when this team doesn't always play to the best of their ability, and especially against a division opponent, and division games get weird, right? I mean, we've seen that with the Bills and the Jets, right? Where it's like, hey, this Bills team is clearly better than this Jets team, but it doesn't matter. It was like that yesterday with the Dolphins. Like, the Dolphins were clearly not the better team, or at least not the better like overall roster or whatever, however you want to frame it, but they were executing at a level that the Bills were not, and so it made it closer and closer and closer. The Bills ultimately found a way to win, though, and as learn from it, correct some things, I think things will be fine for the Bills moving forward.
I mean, I like that positive approach, because I tend to be very positive about the Bills. Like, the Dolphins really did give them their best shot and still couldn't beat them. And I know you can do this with every single game, and I find it annoying when people do it with every single game. But in this game, like, if Keon Coleman catches that pass and the Bills score a touchdown there, if they don't call a phantom holding call on Josh Allen's rush for like, we could be talking about a very, very different outcome to this game. And I know that Dolphins fans will be like, well, what about when Jordan Poyer, the fat flag that got thrown on him? And it's like, well, that flag it was a penalty. It was a penalty. Like it's
like we don't have to frame it as like a dirty play, because I don't think it was like malicious or anything. It's just how Jordan Poyer plays. And he's not a malicious player. It's just that you can't do that type of hit, and that they just that's against the rules. It got flagged, so be it.
Yeah,
like whatever. But the Dolphins gave the Bills their best shot, and it was a very good shot. And honestly, if they had beaten the Cardinals last week, and if the Jets hadn't won against the Texans this past week, they would probably still be. I would probably think like, hey, they've got kind of an outside shot in a weak AFC wildcard race to try and maybe make like one of these spots. But at this point, you only have 2 wins and it's week 9. Your best, you had 2 genuinely good games from your offense, and it wasn't enough. And your defense, and the defense, which really wasn't that bad during the stretch that Tua was out, has suddenly been not very good. And it's like, it's tough. It's very, very tough for this Dolphins team. I kind of feel for them because, like, partially just because of Tua and just sort of the really unfortunate timing that has happened because of all this. But also, it is what it is. Everyone thought they were going to win this division, or if they weren't going to win this division, then the Jets are going to win this division. Meanwhile, the Bills are, excuse me, I need to check our notes here, 4.5 games ahead of everyone else in this division.
Dude, it really is insane, because even me coming into the season, I wasn't confident that the Bills were going to win the division. I picked them to win the division just because I'm going to pick them every single season until some other team wins it, as long as they have 17 behind center. Right. But it was the least confident I've been since 2020. Like, I was like, I don't know, maybe the Jets are really good on paper. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Dolphins put something together and kind of can go on a run here. The fact that they were the 3rd betting favorite before the season, I thought they were 2nd, but it was Jets, Dolphins, Bills was the order before the season started. And now they're minus 10,000 and we're halfway through the season. Like, dude, this is, if you're a Jets or Dolphins fan, you have to be miserable right now, because you've reached a point where you realize he's Tom Brady. It's the same thing all over again. We're dealing with a guy that we literally cannot get past, no matter how good we make our team and how bad they make their team, because he's different. And also that entire process and culture that they've built there is better than what we have, what they have, the Jets and Dolphins, is garbage. Like, they are in so much turmoil, both of those franchises, regardless of all the hope they want to spew. Like, the Bills just ended the Dolphins season, and the Jets are going to pretend like their season still exists. That season's over too. Like, it's wild to think that the second most positive team coming out of the season is probably going to be the Patriots, because they think they have a quarterback, and the other two have to think realistically, do we need to rebuild right now?
Yeah. It's just crazy. I mean, part of this obviously just has to do with Tua being injured. They would not be in this position had Tua been healthy. I get that. I understand all that. I acknowledge that. I agree with that. Blah, blah, blah. But they're not in this position right now. They're not a team that is able to dig themselves out of this hole, because in years past, this was the team that started hot and kind of stumbled down the stretch in December.
Yeah,
I'm not going to sit here and predict that in November and December, this Dolphins team is going to go on a run. I don't see that happening at all. So it is unfortunate for Dolphins fans, but it's over for you guys.
And the cold weather thing, like, Dolphins fans also can pretend like that's not real, but it is. Like, statistically, we have enough data now to be like, they can't win in cold weather. And remaining on their season, they have to go to Green Bay in late November. It's not going to be quite warm there. They have to go play in Cleveland in late December. Not going to be warm
Right.
there. And then they have to go to Jersey in January. So, like, they're going to play
And
cold
those
weather
are all
games.
outdoors too, right? These aren't. This isn't Minnesota or Detroit where you get to play inside. Like this is, that's tough.
And that doesn't even mean like they're hosting the 49ers at one point. Like,
yeah,
their schedule doesn't like they're not going 9-0 to end the season. It's not happening. So they're not making the playoffs. Like I don't even think they're going 8-1 or 7-2. Like they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about? Do you want to do the Colts game at all?
We could do just a minute on that.
Yeah. So Joe Flacco played last night. It wasn't very good. And that shouldn't be that surprising. Do they go with Flacco again instead of Anthony Richardson? And maybe more importantly, how much does that matter? Because, like, I had high hopes for Anthony Richardson coming into the season in our crazy or hot predictions, whatever that was called.
Bold
predictions, yeah. Podcast with Greg and Chris and Kyle and us too. I very strongly felt like the Colts could be the 2 seed in this conference, and they're not. And they're not going to be. Like, they'll be kind of fortunate if they make the wild card at this point. And Anthony Richardson, I mean, you see little bits and pieces here and there with him where you're like, oh my gosh, this dude is a freak of physical nature. And then, but there's so much in between there that it's just like, what is this? Like, what are you looking at? What are you doing? And honestly, a good portion of this is just mechanics. And this is why I was kind of okay with them benching Anthony Richardson. If this was just like he's not seeing things correctly, or if he's not, if it was just sort of more mental, I would just say, hey, this is something he's got to work through, and you kind of just need to let him work through it. But when it's mechanical, when your feet aren't being brought into play, when your body is just sort of out of whack when you're throwing it, that's something you can't fix during a game. You have to be able to take the time off, and let's be honest. I mean, this is not something that gets fixed by NFL teams more often than not. This is something that like a player has to kind of take on to his own self and work on in the off season. And it's not something that he could have really done in the off season because he was recovering from shoulder surgery. And in a similar way, I mean, he gets compared to Josh Allen a lot because of the physical characteristics being, so strong. But I mean, in another sense, I mean, in 2022, when Josh Allen had his elbow surgery, or not surgery, he didn't have surgery on it.
I think
when he had the injury to his elbow, he spent the offseason not throwing because he just needed time to recover from that. And you saw in 2023, the mechanics starting to dip, and it was creating certain issues with that. Now you come back in 2024, he's lost weight. He's worked on his mechanics. It's very clear that he's worked on his mechanics. I mean, just so obvious. And it's helped. I mean, you see how much better the throwing motion is. It's overall just working better for Josh Allen. So I think some people overreacted to the Anthony Richardson benching, saying like, you can't do this because like, how are you going to give someone who only had like X number of starts in college and X number of starts in the NFL? Like, his whole thing is that he's inexperienced. How are you going to take him off the field? How is that the best plan? It's like, but the problem is his mechanics are whacked.
Yeah.
Like, this is not about experience, really. This is just about him not being in sync mechanically. And he's got to take time to kind of work that out. And I don't know if he works that out this season, but I also don't feel like the Colts are giving up on him either. I know some people kind of made it seem like they were. I don't think that's what they're doing. Believe that Anthony Richardson can work it out. I don't know how likely it is, though. We'll see what happens. I've yapped enough.
Yeah, it's a I mean, okay, so a couple things. So on them benching him and the weird outrage on Twitter in particular of like, you can't do this to him. Like this you're giving up. It's the end of his career. I think it was Lewis Riddick. It might have been somebody else. I don't remember exactly, but the tweet from that person, it was somebody that's pretty into football. It was like, there's 52 other players on that team. Like it's
Right.
not just Anthony Richardson. And some of those players' contracts are tied to Pro Bowl appearances and playoff appearances. And some of these guys are in the final years of their career and they don't want to have a losing season. So for you as a franchise to essentially say, we're giving up we're going to stick with this guy who has been, and I'll get to this too, been historically bad through the first beginning portion of this year, just kind of signifies to the rest of the roster, we don't care about you. We only care about him. And secretly, NFL teams really only care about the quarterback, but just kind of ignore that for now. As far as Anthony Richardson being historically bad through the first portion of this year, so I've talked about it briefly from time to time. I made my own statistic called Cuber, which rates quarterbacks, and what it does is it weights each season. So it tries to give you a number that's adjusted for the era. And I've rated 1,608 quarterbacks since 1979. So 1,608. Right now, Anthony Richardson's 2024 ranks 1,580. He's right in line with Ryan Leaf's final season. Like they're having relatively similar seasons. He's been really, really bad. Like really, really bad. So you at some point have to say, like, he's been really bad. We need to somehow fix it. And I don't know if keeping him in there and making him just continue to be awful is going to fix it. If anything, it's going to degrade his confidence. And now, if you look at the Colts schedule, their next 3 games are against the Bills, and Sean McDermott will eat an inexperienced quarterback alive. He will make you look like an idiot. So I don't think they're going to play Anthony Richardson in this game. Then they got to go play the Jets. That defense is pretty damn good still, regardless. They're not playing great this year. They'd eat him alive. And then you got to play the Lions. Like, I don't think he plays the next 3 weeks. I think Flacco's used to some extent as a sacrificial lamb, but simultaneously, Flacco gives you the best chance to beat those 3 teams. I think the Colts probably go 0-3 in that stretch. It's a rough situation. If as a Bills fan, I'd rather play Anthony Richardson because I truly think Sean McDermott would goad him into 3 or 4 turnovers this game. But yeah, I don't know. Like he has all the tools, and there's the comps to Josh Allen, but it seems like all the toolsy quarterbacks are comp to Josh Allen, and none of them work because Josh Allen is the anomaly. Like that could be his nickname, honestly, the anomaly. Like because that's what he is. He isn't. This has never worked before. He's the one that did, and everyone else wants their guy to be just like him, and no one else is. It has to be frustrating for them. I love it as a Bills fan.
Yeah, that's fair. So basically what we're saying is stop Jonathan Taylor. You probably win this game. If you don't, it's going to be a little tough. It's going to be tough. Like we said, the Colts defense started off slow, started off just bad. They've gotten better as the season has gone on, especially now that DeForest Buckner is back. So I feel pretty confident in a Bills win. Whether it's Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson, if we're being honest. Would it shock me if they lost this game? Not really. Just because this could be a game where the Bills defensive line really just gets worked over by the Colts and Jonathan Taylor, and sometimes that's just how it is. But I think if they get it together, if they are able to attack and contain Taylor as much as they can, they'll be fine, and they should walk out of there with a win.
Yeah, I'm with, like, they're the better team. They should win this game. Would it shock me if they don't? No, because the Bills always drop one of these types of games every year. And not that I necessarily believe in trap games. I don't know. I change my opinion on this every year, but like you go from Dolphins, division rival, to the Colts, who are inconsequential to some extent, and then the Chiefs. Like this is a trap. Like this is what people refer to as a trap game. This game between 2 big games, and maybe that plays a role here if the Bills start thinking ahead to that critical matchup against the Chiefs.
Potentially. Spin0481 says, I don't think you need to worry about degrading AR's confidence if you ask him. He is a special QB, and only Lamar compares to him and what he can do. I feel like this is quoting something that Anthony Richardson said, which I am unfamiliar with. If it
I don't know if David just lagged out here, but I'm going to guess he was saying if this is from something, comment and let us know it's from something. If David gets back in the next 30 seconds or so, I think we'd probably take some time. Maybe he has some. Oh, and David is bopping around. Okay, there, you're back now.
There we go. So close. We made it so far into the show without my internet, without Xfinity, specifically Xfinity, on purpose trying to screw me over. Yeah.
Not a sponsor of the show. Not a sponsor of the show.
Not a sponsor of the show. Will never be unless they want to give me actual internet in exchange. I'll lie all the live long day for you, Xfinity, if you just actually give me working internet. That's fine. I'm totally cutting that and using that. I mean, I probably won't because I'll get yelled at, but I really want to. Thank you for joining us, Tippecanoe. Let's see. Charles Shee also says, can't have a QB out here completing under 40% of the passes in the league. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's just, I'm not a believer in like completion percentage is like an end all be all sort of stat, but like, come on. Like that's just bad. Bills are electric. No, you're moving your eyes. Okay, cool. You didn't move for a little bit there, and I was like, oh, did I get frozen again? Okay, cool. No. Bills are electric says it'll be awesome if the Bills do beat the Colts and move to 8-2. Totally. I mean, being 8-2 is pretty nice. I'm all for that, man. All right. We are going to move on to our final segment of the show, which I promised we would do last week, and we're gonna do it this week. Folks, it is time for the return of...
Let's see if it's truth or rubbish. Let's go.
Let's go. It's true or rubbish time, folks. So, if you are unfamiliar with this particular segment of the show, first of all, welcome and thank you for joining us. But we are going to have I will be reading a statement to our lovely co-host, UberHansen. I will ask him if he thinks that statement is true or if he thinks it is rubbish. And feel free to play along at home and leave your thought, true or rubbish, in the comments as well. So, first statement, true or rubbish? Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer are both on the hot seat right now for the Miami Dolphins.
Oh gosh. Rubbish.
Rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
So Greer, yes. Because at some point, like, you have to get rid of the guy that's making the decisions. But Mike McDaniel, who they did, I believe, give a contract extension to prior to this season, I still think they find him to be a boy genius. I don't think he actually is a boy genius. And they're going to stick with him at least for another year. But if next year they don't make the playoffs again, it's done.
I think I'm a bit in the opposite camp where I feel like Chris Greer is definitely safe because he's just been in that organization for so long, and him and the owner just have such a strong relationship, it seems, that guys like that tend to just burrow their way in and find a way to stay like cockroaches in a nuclear bomb. Like, they find a way to survive, man. It's just what they do. And McDaniel, I mean, I think they still feel pretty strongly about him. And I think since Tua has come back and shown like, hey, this offense really does work with the quarterback that you paid. Since you have paid Tua, you kind of need to be able to keep McDaniel, because I don't know. I'm sure there are other coaches who would like to work with Tua and feel like, oh yeah, we can make this work. I don't know if there's somebody who feels as strongly about Tua as a quarterback as Mike McDaniel does.
That's a good call out.
Yeah. Sespinar asks, whose seat is hotter, Zach Taylor or Mike McDaniel? Mike McDaniel. again, Zach Taylor is not somebody whose seat is hot just because the Bengals hold on.
Yeah, and I think that Joe Burrow likes Zach Taylor as well. And if Joe Burrow likes him, it doesn't really matter.
Pretty much. It is what it is. We're going to go to our second statement. True or rubbish? Recently fired Saints head coach Dennis Allen will be the Dolphins defensive coordinator in 2025.
Rubbish. It has to be rubbish.
That is rubbish all after all. It was all rubbish.
They can't switch again. Like, you keep going through these defensive coordinators, blaming them for all the issues. Like, you can't switch again. It's Anthony Weaver. He has to get more than 1 year. Like,
it may not be their choice though. Like, Anthony Weaver did a decent job during that stretch that Tua was out. He got head coaching interviews last year. He might, and in a weak head coaching class
I didn't think
right now. I mean, in 2025, I mean, we're looking at, there's already been 2 coaches that have been fired in Dennis Allen and Robert Saleh. The Jets, who knows what they're going to do, but someone's going to be that head coach.
Well, I know what the Jets are going to do.
Do you think they're going to promote Ulbrich?
No, I think it's going to be Deion Sanders. I truly believe it's going to be Deion Sanders.
Here's the thing. Would that be a psychotic thing to do? Would that be a Jets thing to do? Yes. Is it an Aaron Rodgers thing to do though?
I think he's gone. I think Rodgers is done.
No, I don't think so. I think he has them by the balls, and I think he's too stubborn to say that he's washed.
To go out like this too. Okay.
No, I don't see that happening. But who knows what the Jets are going to do? The Saints are in total cap hell with a quarterback that's old and average at best most of the time. I don't know, man. I don't really see this turning out well for the Dolphins, where they get a defensive coordinator that they actually like, and oops, he's going to be a head coach somewhere. I don't know where, but I get the sense he's going to go somewhere. I don't know, man. It's not a great head coaching class. And that's assuming that Ben Johnson from the Lions actually takes a job this year, which is not a guarantee for some reason.
He seems like Ben Johnson wants a particular job, and he's going to wait for it to open.
Yes.
That's what it has to be.
And I've heard rumors, or I saw someone say, I don't remember who, and this truly is just a rumor, so I don't take credit for anything. But there were rumors that he really wanted the Bears job last year.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. And if that's the case, if you're a Bears fan, you have to be sick knowing that may have been the case, because you look at the talent they have on offense and on defense for the most part, and you're just like, what happened here, man? Like, why are we keeping Matt Eberflus? That's brutal. That's just brutal. Yeah. Moving on. True or rubbish? This is a long one, so stay with me. Also, let's see. What do people say here? What 7 teams get a head coach next year? We already have the Jets and Saints. There's usually at least 7 teams this year. Okay, so I personally always keep a list of the coaching cycle that on my phone. My current hot seats, and I did have, for the record, both Robert Saleh and Dennis Allen on this list before the season started, which is not me bragging. That those were both pretty obvious guys to have on there. I've got Mike McCarthy, Nick Sirianni, Robert Saleh, who's already been fired, Doug Peterson, I'm like, let's go here. Come on.
When is it?
Brian Daboll, which I'm like kind of 50-50 on if they actually fire him. Matt Eberflus with the Bears, Dennis Allen, who's been fired, and Shane Steichen with the Colts. I don't know if there's another coach that you want to throw in there.
What's his name? Raiders.
Oh yeah, Antonio Pierce. How is he not on here? That's an oversight for me. That's my bad. That's on me.
He's gone.
That's right. That's right. Because they already fired their offensive coordinator, their quarterbacks coach, and their offensive line coach.
Yeah.
Which is like, what are you planning on doing, guy? Like, how long do you think that's gonna last for you? That's brutal. If only someone could have realized that he was never actually a head coach material to begin with, but whatever. I mean, he's not quite as embarrassing as like a Freddie Kitchens, because Antonio Pierce, as far as we know, is not like going up to female bartenders in Mobile, Alabama, and having to be pulled away by staffers while he's piss ass drunk. But that's neither here nor there. It's not a good situation for the Raiders. Let's see. Walter says Rodgers isn't hiring Sanders. Charles G says Cowboys, Jacksonville, Patriots. I don't see the Patriots getting rid of
Kraft will hang on to him. Yeah,
they'll hang on to him. They're not good, and their defense is worse than I thought they would be with Mayo. But also, like, they're fine. I can't imagine Robert Kraft pulling the trigger that quickly after having Bill Belichick for that long. I just don't see that happening. I don't know about that. Anyway,
they'll win like 2 or 3. I bet you they get to 4 wins, maybe 5.
Yeah,
and 5 wins with that team. And as long as Drake May looks like he's getting better, which it does, they'll give him Mayo will get another year or 2.
Yeah. All right. We go back to my conversation that I interrupted. All right, true or rubbish? This is a long one. Aaron Glenn of the Detroit Lions, currently their defensive coordinator, returns to New Orleans as I said New Orleans. I don't think I've ever pronounced it as New Orleans. New Orleans as the newest head coach of the Saints as they tank in 2025 to clear their cap and prepare the way for their messiah, Arch Manning.
Rubbish.
Your own rubbish.
Yeah, I'm going rubbish.
And the reason, all after all, it was all rubbish.
The reason being, I don't think anybody wants that Saints job going into next year. I know it's one of 32 jobs. If you go to that team next year, you are going to be utilizing maybe the worst roster in NFL history because they have to everything. I don't think you want to go there. If you're an NFL caliber head coach and you're talented, you've proved yourself. If that's where you end up going, your first season might be 0-17. I don't think you want that because at 0-17, they just fire you. Like that gets you fired almost no matter what. So I don't,
unless you're Hugh Jackson.
Unless you're Hugh. Oh, well, that's the Browns. So I think that you say, all right, I get your plan is to tank next year and then get Arch Manning. I'll wait another year. I'll come in 2026, get somebody else to deal with the nonsense this year because I'm not doing it.
That's fair. I think that's fair. The only reason I used Aaron Glenn specifically was because he was the defensive backs coach in New Orleans for a long time. Got brought over to Detroit when Dan Campbell got hired. Both came from Sean Payton's group in New Orleans. So, this may just be a sort of like call to home. Let's frame it that way for Aaron Glenn. I don't know.
He's 52 now, so he is getting
Aaron Glenn. Yeah. He's this is someone who, I think the league has a lot of respect for Aaron Glenn. I think players also have a lot of respect for Aaron Glenn, and I think that coming from this Lions team that, in that first year they were not good. They were close in a lot of games, but they lost a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he might look at the Saints and realize that it's not a good situation to be in, but as long as he, gets some assurances from this organization that like, hey, if you guys are willing to hold on to Dennis Allen for this long, y'all better be willing to let me take my time with this while you guys kind of clear out the mess that you made before I got here.
Put a poison pill in the contract that's like, if you fire me, you got to pay me $50 million.
Something crazy, right? You know, like you got to be willing to protect yourself to an extent with this. But I think that somebody will look at this job and just be willing to say, I can make it work. And maybe that is Aaron Glenn because he's an older defensive black head coach, right? I mean, that's I don't want that to be like a thing, but that is a thing. And we've seen it with Leslie Frazier, right? Mm-hmm. Where he really wanted that Chicago Bears job. He thought he was going to get it. He didn't get it. And he went to Eberflus. And after that, he, coached another year with the Bills, I believe, right? In 2022. And then it just became another year of like, I'm getting older. I don't know how much more I have it in me. And clearly I'm not going to get another head coaching job. So I'm just going to step away. And now he's with Seattle where he's, basically an advisor. He has no like super strict role where he's calling plays or anything crazy like that. I just think if you're Aaron Glenn in particular, you're looking at certain jobs and you say, this may not be the ideal. It may not be what I dreamed of when I got a head coaching job, but this might work for me.
Would you prefer, if you were a potential head coach, would you prefer going to New Orleans next year, or let's say Carolina's job open? You can pick one. The Saints.
Dude, if they fired Dave Canales, if they fire another head coach, I mean that I would never go to Carolina if that were the case. If they fired Dave Canales after firing Frank Reich, let me frame it this way. If Dave Tepper has communicated to the rest of the league that the only coach he was willing to give a chance to was Matt Rule, an actual snake oil salesman, I'm not touching that job. Like, miss me with all of that. I could not do that. New Orleans might be a genuine uphill battle and maybe even a Sisyphusian sort of task to take on. I'd still rather try to do that than go to Carolina, where I just feel like I'm gonna get totally screwed. Where I don't have to worry about the rolling the rock up the hill because the rock's just gonna go right back on me.
Since 2019, the Panthers have had 7 head coaches. Ron Rivera, Perry Fewell, Matt Rule, Steve Wilkes, Frank Reich, Chris Tabor, Dave Canales. That's since 2019. That's wild. That's insane.
God. Oh, what a tire fire organization. But hey, they were the ones who got Dennis Allen fired. So far, that's Bryce Young's greatest accomplishment as an NFL quarterback. That is Bryce Young's first win, by the way. That is Bryce Young's first NFL win.
No way.
Which is
he didn't get it. He didn't get it last year.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I trust you.
Because they only had 1 win last year, right?
Two.
They had 2 wins. I think both were with Andy Dalton.
I think you might be right. Oh, God.
mean, it's just bad, man.
Oh, no, wait. Sorry, I do remember. Bryce Young did beat CJ Stroud. He outdueled CJ Stroud.
Really?
Yes.
When was this?
That was 15-13 on October 29th. Bryce Young put up a nice stat line. 22 of 31 for 235 yards and a touchdown, no turnovers, while CJ Stroud went 16 of 24 for 140 yards, no touchdowns, no turnovers.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember a single thing. I have no memory of that game ever happening.
I didn't either. So Bryce Young's better than CJ Stroud.
There you go. Transitive property, right? And we're going to leave it at that. Folks, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate you coming out as we always do. If you have not hit the like button, please do so on your way out. It is a big help to us here on YouTube, and it helps send things to the algorithm that allows other people to watch this that aren't just you guys, much as we love each and every one of you for watching this show. You can also share this with your friends, enemies, lovers, and neighbors. If you are listening to this after the live stream, you can leave us a review on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And it is also very helpful for us in those regards as well. Uber, where can the people find you?
At UberHansen on Twitter. I'll be dropping a rooting interest this week on Wednesday, telling you who to root for in all the games this coming week to support the Bills. And then on Friday, matchup preview for Colts Bills on sportsillustrated.com, si.com/NFL/Bills.
You can find me at DFAUXY or at DFoxy on Twitter. I also write for SI Bills, doing post-game recaps there. You can also find me here every Monday night, except next week, because work is getting in the way. God forbid. Glad I remembered that. Yeah. And in addition, again, we are sponsored by you lovely folks who are Cover 1 Pass subscribers. One thing I forgot to mention at the top of the show when we did the read, you get a nice shirt from 26 Shirts, and it's great. I don't know if it's this exact shirt. I'm going to say it is until someone says otherwise, but it's a great shirt and it's pretty cool. And 26 Shirts is a great cause, and we're happy to partner with them for this. So consider subscribing to Cover 1 Pass. Go to cover1.net and sign up today. $60 a year. Best $60 you'll spend on football all year. We will see you all next week. Thank you all for tuning in. Bye-bye.